just try something a little different. You guys tell me if it's any better. All right, so yeah, Trailhead. We're gonna log on in, and I think, yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, I figured out. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. All right. Super. I just learned something. Man, I learned so many things today, like three so far. Three things. And I just learned one of them today. So I'm logging in. I'm logging into Trailhead. And remember, one of the things you might seen if you've been in this class or you're watching this video in the future, and I apologize if you're watching this video in the future, but you didn't give me enough money to do it live. So that's your own fault. If you want this kind of level of entertainment and interaction, you got to pay money for it. But otherwise, watch the video. I just learned something really cool because remember how I said like I can't take the quizzes because I'm logged in, I've already taken the quizzes? Well, that's true. Like when I do the challenge, that's true. But I got another browser open where I'm not logged in, and guess what? I can see the quiz. So where we left off was you can control what your users can access. We're in user management, which actually really sets us up for, and I'm gonna try to talk normal, but it's really hard for me to do that. I don't know that I've ever really talked normal. It really starts to begin to distinguish the security model of Salesforce. And why is that important? Well, because everything in Salesforce is based on trust. Trust means that you know, at all levels, you can trust that the information you're reviewing, the information you're inputting is protected both from exterior threats as well as interior threats in your company, whatever that is, right? That the right people are seeing the right thing in the right way at the right time and all that stuff, right? It's harmonious interaction of data. And so this sets the framework for that, right? And understanding the difference between object and field level security and how to set access to objects, or really how to restrict access to objects. This is one of those notes I want you to take down because I'm going to say it over and over and over again for a reason, because it's on the test and it's important. And because you're probably not going to take the test for a couple of months still, let's see, March, April, you should be thinking about scheduling your test. Then definitely, oh, and I got a little secret for you too that Salesforce is doing that I'll go find on the community and send out to you guys. And listen, one of the things that I am getting better at, but getting better is a judgment, but actually that I'm improving on. Improvement starts with awareness, and I'm aware of what I'm not doing. I'm not doing it yet, but I'm aware of what I'm not doing. And you guys, thank you for being here, for loving me, for doing this, for being a part of this, because, you know, eventually this will be a little more formalized. And I got to put some emergency in my body. My wife gave it to me because I got that crud that going on in my lungs. You know, like typically if I was smarter and more effective, if I was more effective at this class, and you'd be getting email updates and everything would be in the system, and I'm still building all that out. But hey, little by little, we're getting better. So controlling access for your users is important. It also allows you to communicate more effectively. And what I was about to tell you is Salesforce is running a little promotion that if you register for some review classes, they're called CRT classes. They're something days of certification days or something. If you Google in the community certification days, and just, I'll tell you a little secret. Register for the class. This is happening right now as of 2/27/2020. Register for the class. Take it if you got the 4 to 6 hours that it takes to take the class, because it's a good little review of different topics for different certifications. But you also get a discount. I think it's a $70 discount on your certification test, which is typically $200. Now, if your company's reimbursing you, you don't care. If you're paying for it out of your pocket, then you know what you ought to do is register for one of those classes and then endeavor to take the class. But what I've discovered on one of my classes is that they sent me the discount code anyway. So hey, that's just what they're doing. So either way, you get I think you even get a recording of the class. So it's really worth it. Like it's an instructor like me, but I'm going to do that for you guys anyway. So it's really cool. I got a chat. Hang on. I got to open my chat. I just saw the chat. What's the link? I don't know the link, Gil. That's what I got to go Google that. How about this? Let's just look and see. Hang on now. I got to move my chat over to another window. So, da-da-da-da. All right. It might be over and I might be telling you something. Oh, shoot. So let's see. There's one, it's already passed. All right, never mind. All right, how about this? Never mind. Because it's already passed. So what I can do, and I'll work on this, and I'll give it to Amy to work on for us. As a new partner with Salesforce, and even Julia, I think you can even do this too. I think if I buy certification codes, I get a discount. It might only be 10%, but that's it's $20, right? That'll pay for your practice test, which I'll pay for in this class. But we'll get you squared away. Don't worry about it. So I don't know the link yet because clearly it doesn't matter because that class is already over. It was over the 13th. So security. Where we left off was security. And I'm going to drop that down. I'm closing my chat. So if you're trying to chat me, don't. So I'm going to start with where I left off because I have access to the questions now. So if you haven't taken the quiz yet, let me put in the link where I'm at in the chat. So this is where we're at. Is that the link you were talking about, Gil? Because that's where we're at right now for this. So object level security. So remember, I said this is kind of like entering a building. Welcome to the call. Entering a building. You got access to the building. Then objects are like floors. So you have access to the object. What you can do in the objects, like what you can, like, can you go into different offices? Can you just look around? Can you actually make change? Can you so you have your CRED, your create, read, edit, delete. Then you've got record access, which is controlled by the OWD for records you don't OWN. And then you've got field level access, which is most of that's controlled by your profile because your profile is your collection of permissions that you have for that. Hey, Brian, welcome to the call that you have. And so this is all building into that. So what I want to do is I want to go as a review to those questions on the challenge because I don't remember what they are. So field level security allows you to so if you, how about this? How about I actually put the browser that's not logged. So I have a different browser. So the browser that's not logged in, can y'all see this? Field level security allows you to restrict access to certain fields on object records, set passwords on specific fields, make information harder to find, prevent a group of users from accessing and modifying specific objects. So this is the first time we're going to do this because I just learned how to do this, right? By not being logged in a different browser. Okay, no Brave, I don't want you. By the way, Brave is a Chrome browser built by somebody, built on the Chrome platform that can also filter out adware and junk. And if you want ads, you can actually earn a little money as you read ads if you like ads. So let's talk about the question for how we're going to take the test next month or two. Because in 4 to 5 weeks, you'll be ready to take the test. All right, somebody put a chat in there. Let me see what the chatter is. Is it Bitcoin? All right, cool. I don't know. Hey, somebody's got to do something with Bitcoin. So field level security allows you to I'm going to start with D because D is the most ridiculous. Prevent a group of users from accessing and modifying specific objects. So there's only one word in that answer that makes it wrong. So you have to do this when you take the test. This is good test taking mojo anyway. You have to make sure that every aspect of the answer meets every requirement of the question. That's one thing. Second thing is, most of that is true except for one word, and the one word is objects. Objects. That is not field level security, that's object level security. It's testing whether you know the difference between the two. Now, does it make information harder to find? Absolutely, but not actually true, because it doesn't make it harder to find. Field level security makes it impossible to see a field that you have prevented a user from seeing based on their profile. This is why it's so critical to have data integrity. And I mean data integrity from the user record to the, everything else. Because if the user logs in under someone else's login, the person logs in as some other user that has access, then they'll see that information. That's a breach of security, a violation of integrity. Now, B, so that's wrong. You got to be careful of answers that are vague, because they sound good a lot of times. Anyway, so C is wrong. B is wrong because no, it doesn't set passwords on specific fields. The password is the profile restriction. So either you have the profile or you don't. That's your pass. So A is correct. Restrict access to certain fields on object records. Anybody have any questions about that? Did I explain it enough? I'm also going to kind of explain the nature of the design of the test to help you kind of figure out how to get more right answers. Because the secret of passing the test is to not pick wrong answers, only pick right answers. Now, I know that sounds pithy, but it's really, if you can eliminate wrong answers, you have a better chance of picking the right answer. So you got to learn to eliminate answers. So you can manage record level access in your organization using organization-wide defaults, role hierarchy, sharing rules, manual sharing, or E, all of the above. Now, that one is E, all of the above. Why? Well, if you understand role hierarchy, sharing rules, and manual sharing, those are always ways to give access to records. If you already know that, if you didn't know that, and all you knew was C and D, that yeah, I can manually share. Let's take it up from the bottom. D, I can manually share a record. It's actually a setting that your administrator sets, but you may have done it before, but you can manually share your car, go right ahead. Now, what are sharing rules? That's a rental car company. That's a company set up with rules so that they can share their car with their customers. Rules, that makes sense in real life. So that makes sense in the world. And that indication alone, if you were really confused about organization A and B, you could summarize it. E is a correct answer because C and D are so close to correct. It's not always the case, but it could be there. Now, role hierarchies, if you understand parent-child relationships in the world, my records roll up to my parent's parent, all the way up the line. Therefore, role hierarchies is true. And the other way that all of that is even used, B, C, and D, is because the OWD controls access to records. You don't OWN. So the answer is E, all of the above. But that's, a little extra effort that I put behind that so you can help you with that. All right. Any other questions or comments about that? Okay. So I think we're going to go jump into my trail mixes. And one of the things I wish we would all vote for is this, the navigate, like when I'm in a trail mix, it doesn't keep me in the trail. It doesn't it doesn't follow the mix. You gotta manage it through the trail mix itself. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. Anyway, just commentating. So we've done user management. Now we're going to jump into data security. So this is a big one, 3,100 points potential. So let me pop that one in the chat. Oh, there's my chat. There we go. And then that means I can also pop it in. But there. So we're gonna let's do a quick overview of data security. Make sure we're squared away on that. So giving the right people. Did we cover? I don't know if we covered this. We might have covered this already. It doesn't hurt to review this, especially since we have such spaced repetition between our classes. So giving the right people access to the right data, and I'll say it like this too, at the right time, is what makes your organization work. And there's 4 levels we control it, and we'll talk about the scenarios for data at all 4 levels, some of the other things that you can do. So now in this example, they're talking about building a recruiting app to manage, open positions, candidates, and job applications. So you'll have data that's stored that's confidential that you need to protect from other users in the system. And so you want to make sure that the right people have access to that data. And so that layered sharing model, we're going to assign the different data sets to different sets of users, and then it'll create a balance of security and convenience, right? And reduce risk and make sure that users can move through the data and complete data, which is actually communicating to themselves and others the work that is being done, needs to be done, or has been done, right? So this is an important note, though, that this security model also works at the API level. So what that means is, when API is really kind of like the way 2 different databases talk to each other across the lines, if you will. It's like a telephone call between computers. And when you use an API, the user, depending on the tool you're using or how you're doing it, there's typically the access that API has from one system to another is based upon the user credentials of the logged in user that's using the API. Now you could set up one as not a real person, but it's just a user record, controls that information. So while depending, and there's lots of layers of technology that affect that, way beyond the scope of this class, just know that computers talk to each other, and security model travels with the user that set up, if you will, the API between 2 computers. Okay, so remember the 4 levels of data access, or access to your building, the organization, access to the floors, the objects, access to the fields, the different offices, if you will, and then the access to the records, the actual records in that structure. So the organization, the object, and the fields is the structure, and the actual records is based upon ownership. Depending on which user owns that record determines which users have access to that record. Another way to say it is, you walk out into a let's do this thing too. Let's take this analogy and make it a parking lot, right? So if you have access to the parking lot, right, or different fields on the parking lot, different cars in the parking lot, that's one thing. But depending on who owns the car, depends on your access to those cars in the parking lot. Maybe that's a good analogy. Maybe it's not. So remember, records, the only place you can set or restrict access to records, is your organization-wide default. I'll give you a quick anecdote. In America, the stuff you own belongs to you, and everybody kind of knows that's the way it is. I mean, 2-year-olds don't, but adults, right? Go to Fiji, that rule doesn't apply. Everybody in the community owns everything, except if you have things set aside that are sentimental, that are personal, that you want to hoard, keep, whatever, you just call them sentimental, those are yours. And people will respect that level of ownership. But ultimately, everything else is fair. If you leave it out, it's fair game. So the OWD sets a default level access to records, and it's the only place you can restrict access to a record you do not OWN. How do you give back access to those records? Is through the role hierarchy, through your parents own your stuff if you are a child, and their parents and yada yada, it goes up the chain. Rules share groups of records with groups of users based on either ownership or criteria, which we'll talk more about later. So, for example, if Brian owns an opportunity record and I'm Brian's boss, I can see that in the record. If Amy's Brian's coworker and I've got a private model, then Amy, even working right next to Brian, can't see that record if it's set to private unless Brian shares it with her or there's some kind of rule that says there's a reason why it should share. That's a group of records based on ownership or criteria. Or Brian says, hey, he just shares the record with Amy, right? So did I do the security overview? Nope. I got to pop this one in. I'm in that trail, so hang on. I'm in this. I know you could do it yourself, but I'm doing this for the chat. I'm in this very specific trail. And then, of course, manual sharing. And rental cars is a great way to do it. All right. So what objects can a user see? And this is an example, a candidate, a position, or other candidates and positions, or it looks like the user has access, but the offer, they've got no access. And you can define all of these things. And I don't like this example because A, it's new and I've only used it once before. But you can see that you can control the fields on each object that the user can see. You can also set the organization-wide defaults. So if it's private read-only, why do they have it? Oh, the offers are always private, the positions are read-only, and the candidates are private. So that's, okay, I get how it's going now. And then what exceptions can you make? Well, what does that say? Position, controller, Miami. So you can make exceptions based on the record, the role hierarchy would make an exception, a sharing rule would make an exception, or someone can manually share it, can make an exception. And for each individual record, you can share read-only or read-write access. And in the example of a car, you might let somebody borrow your car but there can only be a passenger in it. That means borrowing your ride while you drive it, or they can drive it and they can edit either way. They cannot sell your car for you. All right. So there's an audit system built into Salesforce, and this audit system captures some core data that allows you to control and monitor and manage who's doing what with your records too. So one of them are record modification fields. One of those fields are who created the field and who last modified the record. It records both the date and time of both of those events, and they're both system fields that no user can change. Only when a user changes the field does it record that in the record history, and we'll talk about field history tracking and reporting for important data that matters, who changed what, who created what, and when. Now the login history stores all of your users' logins, and it actually so it records the username, the IP address, if that matters. It does matter, but if you're trying to figure out a problem, the how they logged in and whether they were successful or not. So the date, time, location, and methodology of logging in is all in your login history. Keeps it for about 6 months. You might set up, if you think your systems would not find an error within 6 months, then you ought to set up some type of backup system that'll keep that for longer periods of time. Field history tracking, we'll talk about how that works for changes made to fields. It records the values before and the values after. So if you want to use that data to see what things were like 6 months ago, and you could track that. That's depending on how analytical you want to get with that data. Man, it gives you really good information about how many times a field changes. That might indicate you need a different process to collect that data because it's changing so much. Or maybe it's not changing, it's a problem too. And then there's what's called the setup audit trail. Now, when you log into your org, we've been spending a lot of time in what menu? Correct, the setup menu. So all of the changes that you make in that section. So think about record modification fields, login history, and field history tracking are all front end accountability for interacting with the data. Setup audit trail is the back end, in the back of the house setup. That's tracking and managing your admins or anybody that has access to the setup menu. And that's a permission. Not everybody has access to setup. So anybody you've given access to setup, you can track their activity in the setup audit trail. Setup audit trail only controls the changes and modifications made to your organization's configurations, not the records themselves. The first three are record level, if you will, and the login histories for the user record. And everything, and the other is for the setup level, the meta side. So those are two different things. So let's look at the test, because I have a browser that's available for this. Okay, here we go. So let's take the challenge. If you haven't done it yet, you can configure access to data at all of the following levels except organization, objects, page layouts, and records. Now, this might be a little tricky. You can configure access to data at all of the following levels except. Which one is it? I want you to answer me in the chat, because why not? Or you can open up your mic. I don't care. Who wants to take a guess? A, B, C, or D? And I already know you're not going to pick B or D. How? Because we just about finished talking about B and D. But A and C is a little different. All right. Gil said answer A. Anybody disagree with Gil? I mean, in this question, not everything else. All right. You said page layouts. Interesting. Okay. Brian or Amy, you have a thought about those? Just put it in the chat if you do. If you're not, if that's fine. Amy says C. Okay. So we haven't really gotten there yet, but A is the correct answer. Why? Access to the org is distinctly different than access to data. So the record level is controlled by the OWD. We'll cover this. We'll get into our fingers on it. So conceptually, if you got it wrong, if you chose C or you didn't answer, then we'll get into this a little bit so it makes sense. But I want to point this out from a test taking point of view. The organization controls access to all the data, but more specifically, objects are controlled by the profile's CRED for that object. Records are controlled by the OWD and all the things that impacts it. And we haven't gotten into this yet, but page layouts are assigned by profile. And you can control what access they have based on their profile by how they can see the data. Now, on the page, it's actually a really good one. I'm gonna add. We'll see which one's right when we'll take the test. But I think it's A. You guys think it's C. Somebody will take the test and tell us in a second what it is. But I think it's A. So guys against gals, A versus C. Brian, you got to chime in. All right. You can secure data at the organizational level using all the methods except. And we haven't really, I don't know why they brought this up, because they really don't define all of these. This is really a weakness, but that's okay. They really didn't define all these. Okay, so let's see. A, limit login IP addresses, limit login hours. So A and B are controlled at the profile level, which does secure data at the organizational level, because you're securing your data by time and location, right? Setting password policies. secures data at the organizational level because it determines the reuse of passwords, the expiration of passwords, the complexity of passwords, the resetting of passwords. All of that is controlled at the organizational level. There are no hardware tokens that are designed. So I'm going to go with D as the exception. And I probably should have asked you to pick it, but I don't think they really explained it in the content before that, because your org setting, lockdown, you did your level, and then use other record level security and sharing tools selected to give access to others. So I think it's a weird question for that content. Lucky you have me. Okay. Now, so that's why I gave you the answer. Which of these is not a method for controlling record level access? Organization-wide defaults, role hierarchy, profiles, and sharing rules. What's your answer? It's going to let you. So put in the number 3, and then, well, no, Amy's the last one with C. So which one does not impact record level? A, B, C, or D? Put a 3 on it if you will, just so we know, but it doesn't matter. Which one do you think? You know A is not the right answer because that is the one controlling for record level access. Record level, role. Yes. Somebody said C, and you know records and roles all both begin with an R. So does rules. So C is the right answer. Profiles control object level access, not record level access. Why does that matter? Because I told you. Anyway, so if you haven't taken the quiz, go ahead and take the quiz. And then let me know because one of them's messing with me. Complete the quiz and then tell me if it's C, D, C. That's what it ought to be. Let me know if that's right. For 1, 2, and 3. 1, C, 2, D, 3, C. And if it's not, then let me know which one wasn't A, C, D, C. That's correct. Whoa, sweet. You know, when I take the practice test with you and I show you the practice test, I'm not going to get them all right. I'm going to get 90% of them right, but I'm not going to get them all right. I might get more than that. We'll see. Any questions on the overview? I have a slide I need to recreate because if I used it, it would be wrong. But anyway. All right, let's talk more about the org, because really I'm gonna make the test maker right. Because they didn't cover those things in detail, it looks like they're gonna cover them in more detail now. So that test was, I'm gonna say whatever it was considered a pre-test. And that was just, if you got it wrong, it's just gonna highlight your memory to pay attention to get it right. So we're going to talk about managing users, policies, IP addresses, and login hours. So every user, here's how you control access to the organization. Users have a username and password and a single profile on their user record, right? Together with other settings that determines what they can see and do with the data. And I think that's a 500-point challenge. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up my Trailhead org. If you haven't done that yet, I'm going to launch my playgrounds. So we can take a look at this as I explain it. Because hopefully this will help. All right. So I'm going to go to setup. Yeah, I know, security alert, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to click on users. And I'm just going to go to a user record. Now remember, this is a record of an object like any other object. It's a standard object. It's the user object, right? I'm going to open up Ada Balua because I can. So Ada, let's look at what Ada's record has, right? So she's got a name, which is her first and last name, her alias, which is a combo of that, an email address, which isn't going to work, but it's in an email, her username in the format of an email, her nickname, and basic information about her, what's relevant to her, whether she's active or not, and her profile. So she's got and the license. So the license ultimately controls where they can go, right? The license to drive. The profile controls what they can see and do, right? So she's got a force.com free user profile. If I edit that record, and the reason I'm editing the records, I want to show you a couple things about it. So it's a little confusing sometimes. And by default, it really doesn't matter because you really got to build this out based on data security and record security. So it's where it matters that it matters. So the role has a red bar on it, which means it's required. But one of the options is not specified. Now the roles, right, are in that role hierarchy, but you could choose non-specified. So while it is a required field, one of the possibilities is they're not in a role, which means no records roll up to them no matter what. If they're in a role, let's say like the CEO role, which typically is the top one, then all records that their profile gives them permission to, they will have access to. Access, right? So if their profile says they can create, read, edit, and delete a record, and they don't own it, but somebody below them in the role hierarchy does, they can do cred on it. If somebody below them in the organization owns a record that they don't have access to because of their license, they'll never be able to see it, no matter what, because they don't even have access to that parking garage. If they've got access to, let's say they've got read access to the recruiting app, all the objects in the recruiting app, then if even though they're the CEO, they still don't have a license to edit it or delete it or create it. They can only read it. Does that make sense? And if they don't have the ability to edit it, to read it, then they can't edit it, and they surely can't delete it because you can't delete what you can't see. So maybe they can only just create records. They don't do anything, and they just create them, and that's it. So again, that's what the profile controls. Now, again, a couple of these other things, notice the marketing users turned off. That's because a force.com license doesn't include anything to do with marketing, so you can't turn that on and off. And any of these other things, like these are permissions, but they're assigned at the user record level. Now, again, this is a page layout for a user record. Depending on your org, you can customize this page layout as well to be more relevant for your organization with the things that you pick up and do. And you can even create custom fields on this that have field level security and everything else. So HR can plug into this. They don't need to create a HR record for employees. It could all those fields could be built in here as well. That's what I wanted to show you there. So the user record itself the user record themselves has all of this information that's connected to it. So since we're already there, let's see. You can add multiple users. So let's see, you can create users. Now the difference with multiple users, creating multiple users at a time, is that you don't pick up all that specific user information. So if I click on add multiple users, then it's basically gonna, let me put this back to normal. So it's gonna say, what license are you adding users? So if I did my Chatter external license, then all of my users, all I need is the name, the profile they get, and really it's only one, right? and then all I gotta do is fill in their first and last name and their email address, which will be their username in this regard. And I can just keep adding users. I can click that generate password and they'll get an email that says, hey, log in here, blah, blah, blah. So you can add multiple users at once. You just don't set all of those locale settings and those manager settings and those user license settings, but it is a quicker and easier way to do it. Now, if you really got a lot of users, if you're in a big org and you're doing admin work, you would just set up a import file and import all the users with all the information that you need based on each user so that they're squared away. Okay. Deactivating a user. You cannot delete a user. That's a great statement. You cannot delete a user. Let me go back to the user record and show you. You see that user? There ain't no delete button. So that messes with people, but I want you to think in terms of reality. If Ada Balua is no longer with our company, then when I can't delete this user record. That would be a lie anyway. Why? Because she was a user at one time, and that's history, and I want to maintain history. That's why I have a CRM, which is why I love to tell my favorite joke. That's why we're not a political party. We don't rewrite history, right? So you wouldn't take, if Ada leaves and Jada comes on board, her sister, you wouldn't overwrite Ada with Jada, because that would be lying too, because you're eliminating that Ada was ever there. So we never overwrite a user record either. There is one exception. And by the way, the test may not ask that question directly, but it's always one of the answers. It's an option because they're really trying to show you that it's a bad option, which is why they put it as one of the wrong answers on the test. So if you understand philosophically what the purpose of a user record is, there is no situation where you want to, change the history of what Ada did in the system, even if she was only there for a week. If she made one record, that's history. If you change the user information, it looks like someone else did it, and that's not true. So we always want to reflect the truth, because the truth is where trust is built on. Now, if you want to free up that Force.com license, then you have to deactivate the user, okay? Deactivating frees up a license. Whatever license you were using, it frees it up so you can create a new user record and not need a new license. Now, there's an exception to that. In some cases, you may not deactivate a user, but rather freeze them. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Freezing does not free a user license. It merely freezes that user from logging in to the system with their license. That makes sense? They've got a license. They just can't use it. It's frozen. And I don't know any of the songs from Frozen, so lucky you, I don't get to sing. So the question is, it's always on the test. It's always been on the test. It's always gonna test your knowledge of this, because this is at the core of good data integrity. And I've seen it happen more and more than once. That, matter of fact, in real life, I have a customer who's had, so years ago, they had a guy got fired and a new guy came on, and in their org, somebody overwrote, let's just call him Kyle's record with Bob. Well, then Bob worked for a while. Guess who came back? Kyle got rehired. Yeah. That screwed everything up. That's when I realized, oh, that's a problem. That's how I know, because I did it. So when Kyle came back, I painfully did the work to match the dates, to convert all the ownership of as many records as I could from new dude back to Kyle. And I mean, from the, yeah, right. And so Kyle could go back to work as Kyle. And so it fixed it. Kyle actually got fired again and rehired again, but it didn't. So that happens in organizations. Sometimes somebody leaves for a week or a month or 3 months. Sometimes they leave for good and still come back. So if I don't want to go, if I'm not that tight on licenses, or it's not that big of a deal, or somebody's going on leave, maternity leave, paternity leave, any of those things, I might just freeze their license, because I don't want to mess with. I don't want them getting into the data and doing anything, but I also don't want to mess with running out of licenses when they come back, or blah, blah, blah. So I just freeze it and eat the money. But if somebody leaves, deactivate them. Go ahead, Amy. What?
I sent a question in Chatter about usernames.
Oh, legally. Oh, so like if your name changes from Amy McNabb to say Amy Karuba, right? Is that what you're saying? So you could, that's fine. In that case, it's the same person. You just want to maintain the integrity of every human that gets a user record should keep that user record.
Does the system know that though? Like if you...
No, well, it would only, so let's say Ada gets married, right?
Right.
So when I change her name to Ada Brom, right? But let's say her email stays the same, right? It's fine. If the email doesn't change, or if the email does, actually, let's say her email changes too. I could just change it to Brom. And I could even change her username to Brom. As long as it's unique, life is good. Does that make sense? Now, it'll like, so it doesn't maintain the history of Ada Ballou. Everything from the day one is going to look like Ada Brom. Does that make sense, Amy?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? Please do not change your name in the trail. It's like, okay, so that's a special, right? So, it would reflect as a change, and there would be no significant. There would be a record in the setup audit trail that I changed her name. There might be a record in the history fields to show if I made any changes to the user record. But that's it. It would just change, just like I changed the name to a different person. Now, that's a great scenario, because that's really the only reason to overwrite a user records information for a person. But it's still the same human being that we're talking about, so it doesn't destroy the integrity. Now,
when we have situations where there's like gender reassignment, for instance, that sort of thing. Okay.
Right, which is another reason why anyway. All right, so yes, that's fine. You can make all those changes here. This is a playground limitation where I can't change her username. But even if I could, like, without changing her username, I can still change her email and her name and all those things, because those things are, they do change. Now, there's one other instance that's very similar, where you would actually change the information of one physical human to another. Can anybody think of a reason why I would do that? Why I would change Ada Balua from Ada to something else, and it's a different human being. There's only one scenario that would be I would call appropriate. Can you think of it? They never logged in. So HR hired somebody and they never showed up for work. Now, in my purest data integrity self, I would say, just don't activate the license, leave it, don't overwrite it. But if all the settings are such and all of the things you did, and maybe it was a really custom user record, but the person didn't show up, and you just all you're doing is changing the name and email address and username a little bit, fine. If they've never logged in, then that's not really a used user record. But once a user record is used, you should never change who that belongs to. the person it belongs to. The person may change their name. The person may change their gender. The person may change their email. The person may even change their username for whatever reason. They might change their profile. Definitely their role might change. Their permission sets might change. That's all fine. It's still the same human being. Or as they said in one episode of Star Trek, the same skin bag of mostly water. Okay? As long as that skin bag is never logged in, it's not a used user record. As soon as they log in once, you got history on them, that skin bag information should always match that user record. Does that make sense, Amy? That answer your question? Thank you. All right, let me get back to the lesson because I think I've talked about that enough. Okay, so any questions on deactivating or freezing a user? Okay, I'll say one other thing about freezing a user. Sometimes, mostly with executives and administrators, if you try to deactivate a user that has their record built into automation, you cannot deactivate that user record. You can freeze it to keep the skin bag from logging in, but the user record cannot be deactivated. Does anybody have an inkling as to why? If the VP of sales leaves, and I've set them up in automation rules, some processes that are automatic, like approval processes and those things. And because of the way I set it up, I had to use their user record as part of that process. They cannot be deactivated from the inside, which is the user license. You can freeze them on the outside from logging in to protect your org from them, the skin bag, but their user record is required for all other users. So it's a cotter pin, or it's a cog in the wheel of the processes. You have to take them out of those processes, replace them with another active user, then you can deactivate it. That's a very common occurrence for admins at admin day to day because people leave. And those people are important people to your organization. So you can freeze them to keep them out, and then you can adjust the automation, because if Salesforce let you deactivate them, then that would break automation and make Salesforce look bad, and Salesforce doesn't like to look bad. Salesforce always works. Okay, password policies. If you go into setup and type in password, there are two places that you can control the password policies. One is under security, which is password policies. And the other is a P word. Anybody want to take a guess what the P word is? The appropriate P word for this class? Where else do you think password policies live? Just think, what P word is it? P word! Put it in chat. Let me know you're there. Exactly. The profile. Why? Because you're controlling the password policies for a group of users. This password policy is your company password policy, the default password policy. I didn't think about that profile, and everybody inherits this, just like they inherit the company locale settings, they inherit the company language settings, the company currency settings. All of that are defaults that you can change for groups of users, or even not individuals, groups of users. So a couple things. You can set how long it takes the password to expire or never. How many old passwords are remembered. That's insane, but people do it. How long the password has to be, how complex, whether it contains the word password, because you got people that still do that 30 years into technology. And then my favorite one, which is the lockout effective period, which we'll talk about in just a second. So you can even, and you can do other customizations. None of that is on the test. But So you got two places. We'll look at the password policy when we look at profiles again, but these are things that, you know, you got to have set up for your organization. If you don't know what they are or what they should be, I would say go with the defaults of Salesforce. Salesforce always has a security checkup that you can run, and if it thinks your organization should make a change to the policy, it'll tell you. And if it thinks you should, but you're a security person and your executives and you have chimed in and have agreed that your policy is okay, then ignore that warning. It's fine. Now, does that make sense? So let's talk about that real quick. So a user, to get in your org, has a username and a password. That's what they know about their login. The computer in the sky, if you will, is looking for something else. And that something else is either a trusted IP, which means the computer network they're logging in from, the only way that you trust anybody from that IP address, so it bypasses the cookie that's logged in by their browser, that the browser collects. It bypasses looking for the cookie because it saw the IP address that got a thumbs up. That does not restrict somebody from logging in from any other IP addresses. It just says, hey, you got that IP, you come on in. I don't need to see your cookie. So think of it like this. Think of it like a toll booth, right? If you've got the Easy Pass or the Peach Pass, you just go right, you can go through a cash lane with an Easy Pass. It just sees your it just raises the gate because it sees your pass. So you just pass right through. If you don't have a pass, you just give them cash. That's the cookie. Does that make sense? That's a trusted IP. Now, why is that important? Well, because the next little block talks about restricting logins by IP address. So trusted IP is a gimme, come on through. A restricted IP limits your access to that and that alone. Only this lane can you come through. Does that make sense, everybody? Trust is a gift. Restrictions are a requirement. And that's done at the profile level. So let's take a look at it back here in our system. So click on Setup. Type in Network. Click on Network Access. And all you're saying here, and if you don't know your IP addresses, good, you means you're a normal human being. But normal, I mean in the workforce. But if you do, you just put the range in there. You click on New, and you say everything from 107.100.25.10. That's the way the phone number works. Anybody coming in on lanes 10 through 100, come on in. Or you could say anywhere to, like, your network might even be up to 55. I don't know how that crap works. Just ask your IT guy. All it's saying is users logging into Salesforce with a browser from a trusted network are allowed access without having to activate their computers, AKA their browser. Their computer browser could be, and they say computers because it could be a handheld computer, mobile computer, tablet computer, eyeglass computer, watch computer, dog collar computers. That's going to be coming there anyway. That makes sense? Okay. That's trust. Trust is a gift. Now, restrictions is not really a restriction. It's, like my dad would say, it's a privilege. I'm just limiting your privileges to this range. So profiles are all about permissions. Remember, I want you to understand that because there's only one place restrictions really occur, and that's at the OWD, where you restrict access to records you don't OWN. But if I want to restrict login access by IP range, then I go to the profile section and I do that. So if you type in user again, because this affects groups of users and any individual user is going to be a part of a group. So if I click on profiles, and I believe if your org is the same as mine, go ahead and go to any of the custom profiles. So I'm going to go to my custom sales profile just because it's a custom one. And if I go down to the bottom of this long page, profiles is a pretty ominous page, by the way. Here's my cred of all my objects. Can you imagine if you had 697 objects? It's a long section, but it's all the same. There's that profiles password policy. So I can change the password policy for the profile, PPPPP. I can edit the login hours, and I can restrict the login IP ranges. I'm not really restricting them. What I'm doing is I'm saying to the profile, which is just a set of permissions, I'm only giving you the permission from here to there, because that's what my network IP addresses are. So, and if you don't know what they are, talk to your IT guy, they know. I can do the same thing with login hours. So my login hours are the same thing. By default, Salesforce comes wide open, 24/7, every day of the week. But here, so if I did 8 p.m. to 8 p.m., there's no window of time between 8 p.m. and 8 p.m. So that window is closed if the times match. If I go say, well, you can only log into our org from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., then those are the times, and you could change it by day. Whatever the rules are for your world should be the rules that you can set in Salesforce. And it doesn't matter which two times you connect, right? So once I'm doing that, I'm not restricting the hours, I'm defining them. I'm not restricting the IP addresses, I am defining them. Does that make sense? So now that in my example, my hours are defined. So the permission for this profile, I've defined the hours that it's okay for them to log in. I could do the same thing with IP ranges. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Awesome. Did the same thing, did that little section there. So if you have any questions about that, so we are going to follow this little challenge real quick. So I'm going to do my thing that I do, which is I'm going to make this smaller. I'll make that smaller too. See which way works better. All right. So let's see how this is going to work. I'm just looking at the challenge real quick. Who did we lose? We lost Brian. Okay, Brian, come on back. We miss you, man. Okay. So I'm going to go to my user record. Yeah, I'm going to change the sides. This is on sucker. It just works better for me when I cover up stuff that doesn't matter. So I've got, there's Mr. Drew Brees. Just so that I can show you, I got to deactivate Drew. Actually, now I'm going to leave Drew alone. Not changing anything. So the challenge requirements, I just made sure I have one available license. I don't need, we'll see if we need help later. Never use help unless you need it. If you've tried everything else. So let's create a new user. So this one's going to be guest admin. I'm just going to put guest admin at mycompany.com. I'm going to give it a Salesforce license. And I'm going to give them the profile system administrator, making them active. I'm going to activate them first and then deactivate them. Why? Just because it might be one of the, I want to make sure that it's clean. I mean, I did this exercise a long, long time ago. So now I'm just going to check my challenge. And so they're really just making sure you know how to create a user record, follow instructions, and then deactivate that user record. You know how to do it. Woohoo, I did it. Life is good. Earned the badge again. Questions, comments, concerns. Today and Monday will be profile day. All right. So now we're controlling access to objects. Wait a minute. I forgot to put in. I'm doing this chat for Amy's benefit more than anything. She doesn't know it yet. Because I haven't given her the benefit of it yet. Welcome back, Brian. We're moving on to the next one, which is access to objects. And really, look at the profile for a second. Let's go to profiles for a second. We're going to get here anyway, but look, the simple way. When I go to my custom sales profile, right? Again, this is the long page, but let's just talk about what the profile controls, right? So it's the name, the license that it affects, and every profile that you can edit is a custom profile, right? Let me just show you that real quick. Standard profiles cannot be edited. So if I have a standard profile, which could be any of these, and I'm going to call it I'm just going to look for a standard user profile. So you can you change that? That is not, what the heck are they doing? Okay, for 20 years, it's been the case that you cannot edit a standard user profile. So hang on. My mind is a little blown right at the moment. Well, clearly, you can only edit some of it. So at least the cred permissions. Anyway, all right. I'm just going to deal with it. My mind is just mad right now. So not your problem, 'tis mine. Okay. So object permissions are access and permissions on that object. So the account object, contact object, all those things, right? Now, this is very, very important. If I give you read access to, I give you read-only access to, say, the position object, right? For all the positions that are available, and you're a hiring manager. So I'm going to give you the ability to see the positions, but no ability to edit it as a system admin based on your profile. You, the HR manager, says, "Hey, Dominic, I'm gonna give Amy read. I'm gonna share this record with Amy. Read write. I'm gonna give her read write access because she's a manager. I'm gonna give her read write access to this position record so she can do whatever she wants. And I might have even done that with a rule, or individually, right? The question is, can Amy edit that position record if she only has read-only permissions on her profile? What are your thoughts in the chatter? Gil is the HR person who's in the recruiting. He's a recruiter. He shares a position record with Gil. Wait, no, Gil shares one with Julia. Julia's got read-only access to the position record. Can Julia edit the record if Gil gives her permission to? What's the answer? Somebody can type something in. What do you think? How about this? You give your car keys to your 13-year-old neighbor and you say, "Here you go. Can they drive your car?" Not will they drive your car. Can they legally drive your car at 13 in America? The answer is no, right? So same thing holds true with Salesforce. Just because your dumb neighbor gives the dumb kid, just because your dumb neighbor takes your keys doesn't mean they have a license to drive it. Same thing happens in Salesforce. Just because somebody shares edit access, read write access to a record, if you don't have a license to do it, you can't do it. All right. So, so depending on the person's position, when you're analyzing who should get what permissions, mostly for, when you're creating, when you think about who's going to access the record, you got to identify all the people that need to see it. What I do is I take all the profiles in a list, right? Because you can have a list of all your profiles. And then when I have a new object, I ask the question, I go down the line, what should analytics, what should they be able to do? And then you can answer the question, CRED, create, read, edit, delete. So this is all good information, right? And you do the same thing. You look at the custom, the object could be custom or not. And you decide which position gets what level of access. And this one is actually putting in the fields, right? No social security number can the hiring manager can't see the social security number. Make sense? So you have to create a little template like that. I do that when I interview customers about, when they get set up on Salesforce. Like, who needs to see what? Who should not see any of this data is what I first say. Because, and they go, well, most is not what I'm looking for. Any one record that any one person should not be able to see means I got to set the OWD to private for record access of other people's records. But if they shouldn't see it at all, then it affects them everybody liked them, therefore profile. I'm gonna restrict the access on the profile. And I'm really not restricting access. I'm only granting, right? I'm only giving them the permission to read, create, edit, or delete. I'm only giving them that permission instead of all permissions. So while it says restricting access, in order to take the test, it's always a better frame of mind to understand that profiles are a set of permissions. But I might only give you the permission to read that object, not create or edit or delete. Okay, now standard profiles, let's see what it says. All right, I got a new distinction. You can't edit the object permissions on a standard profile. And I got to tell you, I always thought you couldn't edit anything on a standard profile, but turns out I just discovered today, I learned 4 new things today. So you can't edit the object permissions on a standard profile. So that standard user profile has the permission to delete all the standard objects. And since you can't control it on a custom, on anything, so there you go. That's a good thing to note. And then the profile could be affected by the user license as well. So when it comes to this particular challenge, we may have to go up and complete some other stuff, but I don't think so. When it comes to this challenge, I guess we're going to set that up. Now, when you look at this profile, this looks different. I'm going to put the 2 pictures next to each other so you can just see it. We just looked at the standard user profile. And you may have noticed that this page looks very different than that picture. Y'all see that difference? This is a long, scrolly page full of stuff, and that's a bunch of, So here's where that's controlled. They'll probably say it in a minute, but I'm just going to show you now. So if you're in your setup screen, click on User Management Settings. There are 2 settings, enhanced permission set component, enhanced profile user interface. Click enable on that. And then this is a brand new feature, permission set component view. All right, now you should also have the enhanced profile list views set up. Why? Click those 2. So y'all got that under user management settings. Turn on enhanced profile list views and turn on enhanced profile user interface. Now, this is a matter of preference, except for the enhanced profile list view. So do you have yours on? Everybody got theirs on? Enhanced profiles list view allows you to create list views on your profile object. Everybody clear on that? The enhanced profile list view feature in the user management settings allows you to create list views. You might say, why would I create a list view? We're going to do that in a minute. But let's say you want to create a list view. Remember what a list view is, right? It's a saved search. It says, hey, I just want to have my custom profiles. So the first step of any list view is to give it a name. Second step is to add filters. So the way this little filter tool works here, watch what I'm doing. I'm going to click, don't do this, just watch what I'm doing. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to the profile details and whether, remember that checkbox, whether it's custom, then I want that to be true. And then if I want to add more, let's say I want to see what the user permissions are, but for, I need to make sure that all my profiles have certain user permissions. I need to access it. I'm just picking some. Don't sweat it. I want to be able to make sure everybody can send emails. All of these are right. Create. I want everybody to be able to convert leads. That's a permission. And look, you don't have to memorize all these. You just got to know what you're trying to do and see if you can find it. Edit events. These are all the permissions that are out there. Maybe I don't want to let my users export reports. So I want to put that, whatever they are. And by the way, there are, just so you know, in case you look, this seems hard and tasky, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, it is. There are other tools that people use that do a lot of this stuff. So whatever yours are, and then you can save that list view. And then it's just a list view, and it's a series of columns and filters. So what happened to my, that's my all profiles. Look at that's all my profiles. So I'm looking at the name, the license, and whether it's custom or not. Now I'm looking at the custom list view, and I've only got 3. And these are the permissions that I'm concerned about. So if at one day I decide, we have a new policy, no exporting reports, watch what I can do. And I'm going to take away exporting reports and apply it to all 3 selected ones. And I can manage, that's it. I just manage all my users. They no longer, as of this moment, they no longer can export reports. Why does that matter? Because I want them to edit leads from lists. So I want to give them something different instead of reports. Amy, you got a question? So I'm just showing you what that enhanced profile list view does. That setting allows you to create list views on your profiles so that you can manage permissions or object permissions, whatever you want. I'm just doing user permissions, but it could be object permissions as well. That's just a little sidebar to show you why it looks different, because now when I look at my profiles, and I've got the enhanced profile interface, now mine looks like the picture before. So this is the enhanced profile interface, where instead of having one long page of all of the options, I can now walk through each one of the sections a little more effectively. So it makes it a little easier sometimes to manage. Again, it's a matter of preference. So I'm going back to the trailhead. And again, managing profiles comes from the profile itself. And then this is the enhanced profile interface. And there we go. Okay, any questions or comments? So creating a profile always happens by copying an existing profile. Assigning a profile is let's see what it says. Find use click add next one of them from the profile drop down. Yeah, okay. Now, so I already covered all that stuff and looking at the profiles themselves. So again, The profile, enhanced profile list view gives you list views on the profile object with edit capabilities. That's why it's called enhanced. And the enhanced profile user interface changes the way you see the profile from a single page to a sectional page, if you will. Okay. Now, permission sets. Remember all those permissions I put on my list view? Of all the permissions, right? So this is the permission sets I identified. But of all my permissions that I have available to me in, what a profile could have, the permission sets are assigned to individual users. So it's a one way to extend the functionality without having to an individual user without having to create an individual profile for them. Why is that important? Well, it's because if you've got, and it happens in all sizes organizations, that there's that user in their job needs to do more than the other users like them, right? So not all accountants are created equal, not all accounts receivable reps are created equal, not all sales development reps are created equal. So you need to be able to give individual users access to things that they can handle. If you hired me as a salesperson in your organization, I'm showing up and I'm different, and you hire somebody else who's never used Salesforce in the same role, you may not give me a different profile, but I got skills. I got certifications that demonstrate I got skills in Salesforce. So you might want to let me create and run all the reports for your team, where you wouldn't let new guy do it or new gal. Does that make sense? So permission sets extend the profile for individual users. And look what it says here. You can use the Salesforce A app to assign permission sets to a user. That's a very key. All of these little things on the screen are little hints as to what's on the test. Because what they're really saying is, hey, if you've seen this screen 1,000 times, maybe even by osmosis, right? If you've used this screen 1,000 times, by repetition, you probably know it, but by osmosis, you might even remember what that's saying. So that's an indication of where to study for the test as well. But not to get crazy. So you can give them access to custom apps or objects. You can grant them access to different fields. Anything that you can do on a profile as it relates to the system permissions and the object permissions, you can do in a permission set. Now, typically, if you've got 10 different permissions you want to assign to a single user, I would, instead of creating in addition to their profile, I might most likely create 10 different permission sets, one with each permission, and assign it to a single user, so that if that person changes roles, jobs, or effectiveness in that permission, they screw up, I want to be able to take away the one permission, not all of them. The other thing, this is a good note, right? So it's additive. I don't know, let me see if I can I want to use something on the Zoom meeting, if it will do it. Why can't I see all my stuff on the Zoom? Can everybody see me okay on Zoom? Oh, there it is, wait. So watch this. So I'm going to draw. So the profile plus the permission sets equals all the permissions. That's the total amount of permissions that person has, right? So what the note is saying is, you can't give somebody edit access in an object right? So they got, I'm going to draw. So you give them edit access here in the object. That's what I'm going to call edit. But you only give them read access to that same object here in the, dadgummit, would you please? Oh, I got to select. In that permission, so they've got, I'm going to do this. Damn it. So they've got these two permissions in their profile, and you give them a permission set that includes one of those two permissions, they still have both permissions. Does that make sense? Because it's additive. It's additive. In order to take away a permission, you have to remove it from the profile. The profile is the baseline set of permissions that a user has. A permission set adds to that, does not take away. Questions, comments? And now managing permission sets, if we look at permission sets, you can see who they're assigned to. So you can either assign permissions from the user's record, or you can assign users from the permission set itself, if you, depending on which way you're going with it. Okay. So I would imagine we're going to have to create a permission set. So let's demonstrate that. And I'm going to, again, do my little thing where I try to keep two things open. Okay, here we go. I got to make this one smaller. Why it doesn't remember? I don't know. Okay. So if you go to permission sets, and let's say, I'm going to clone a permission. I don't care which one, right? So I'm going to call this one API access. Right? It's my sales user license. Fine. Since I cloned it, it didn't matter. I could create a new permission set by clicking new. You should play with these. It's all good. So now it's going to be access. How about this? Right? And now that I'm creating it, I got to say, okay, what license is this against? So it's going to build it inside. So I'm saying this is just my Salesforce users versus my Chatter users, those kind of things, right? Now you can't grant more permissions than the license allows, but you can, grant them more permissions. So, what is this thing trying to do? Okay. So what they were trying to show me was, anyway, so again, I could go to, oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm always amazed at these little trailhead playgrounds. There's been releases in the last week or two. So the stuff that's new to me, not new to you. So I'm always entertained by it. So again, I can edit. So when you create a permission set from scratch, like I did here, everything's blank. So you can just say, all right, you need, you set the apps that they can do. Right? So you're just adding something they didn't already have. I'm in the enhanced profile manager. So I can just move from one section to another. And if there's I don't need any connected apps, I can then go to my app permissions or my system permissions. It's just different sets of permissions. And I can edit up anything that I want. I think this one I said is what? Dashboards. So I'm going to do a Control F. Remember I said read the screen? Well, a great way to read the screen is let the computer do it because it's faster and more accurate. So if I type in reports, then create and customize reports. There's 23 places the word report lives. And I'm going to do dashboards next. All right, why is it not letting me edit? Oh, I got to click edit first. Duh. Just going to let the computer do the reading on the screen. There it is. All right there, buddy. Create customized dashboards because they're never far apart. Edit my reports, edit my dashboards. So I'm doing reports and dashboards, but notice I'm just letting the computer read the screen for me. Oh, didn't even know that was a permission. Look at that. I just solved one of my customers' problems. Damn, I learned 5 things today just by clicking around. Notice all the permissions that have the word report in them. I'm adding to this guru. I don't have to. I'm just doing it because that's what I want to do. There we go. And I could probably look for dashboards. This is me just being. Everything related to reports and dashboards. If it ain't checked, I'm checking it. Y'all see what I'm doing? Does this make sense? So anything you can't do, look for it in system permission somewhere. Subscribe to dashboards, subscribe to dashboards and add recipients, subscribe there. Look at all that. It just goes down the page and makes my life easy. Okay, good. Look at that. Now that I've done that, I can hit save. Yeah, I'm fine with all that. Now I can click manage assignments. And I can add assignments. What happened? What happened, man? And all I'm doing is adding users. So I can add all, I wouldn't, right? But I can add any user. And as long as their license see, it doesn't match their user license, doesn't match their user license, or the user's inactive, doesn't matter. It's sloppy, but Salesforce corrected it. So I'm all good. And that makes sense because why would you assign permissions to a user that's not active or doesn't have the license for it, right? Okay, so this is creating context for the recruiting app that we're doing. And what we're going to do now is just take the challenge and then we'll be done for the day. How about that? You like apples? How you like them apples? All right, so let's jump in and let's complete the challenge. So I will be a little quieter and I'll let you do it. But if you want, if you have a question, chime in or chat me. What was the nope for? Amy, you said nope. I don't remember nope. I don't know. I asked the question. You must have said no, but I don't know what the question. Yeah, it was a while ago, because my chat in the meeting chat is over there, and my eyes are over here, and they don't always connect. So you got to wave or something. All right. So we're gonna clone the read-only profile. How do we do that? Let's go to the read-only profile. You can use the filter. There's read-only. Clone it. We're gonna call the profile cleaner. Now, if you scroll down, if you're there already, so if you went to profiles, I'm going to talk you through what you should have done from memory while you do it. Don't wait for me to say it. So go to profiles. So you're in setup, profiles, click all profiles, click the R to restricted read only, click the clone button, give it a name of cleaner. Now we're going to control the access to objects. So what do I need? Now that I'm looking at the cleaner profile, I'm in the profile cleaner, right? I need to go to my object settings. Forget everything else. We'll go to the object settings because I don't want to do everything. We only got 15 minutes. And I'm going to start with the accounts object. Watch what happens to my little breadcrumb trail here. I get another drop-down tab. Now, remember, if you didn't turn on, don't do what I'm doing. If you didn't turn on Enhance Profile User Interface, then your profile for read-only looks like this. Whoops, I'm sorry, cleaner. It's a long, scrolly page. See all that? So all those settings I bypassed to get to the object settings, it's just, again, remember I said it's a preference. So in my world, account, I want to read and edit. Contacts, read and edit. Leads. Now, if you don't, I got to scroll my page over. And leads is read and edit. And then I got to scroll all the way back up or down, same way, and hit that. So if you didn't follow that, don't worry about it. I'm going to go back to the way yours should be, which is I'm in my user management settings. I'm going to turn on my enhanced profile interface, go back to my profile. I'm going to hit that cleaner profile. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to go to my object settings just so you see the difference. Just seeing it sometimes helps you understand it. There's nothing wrong with the way you got it. You're just seeing it different. As long as you accomplish the same result, it's all right if it looks different. So now it's a little different in this enhanced interface. One of the differences is from each object, I can control more about that object, specifically field level security. So it's just a way, it depends on the kind of tone of your job. I know a lot of admins on a daily basis. They're really, even during the day, depending on what they're doing, and they don't do this a lot as an admin. This is mostly in setup. Depending on the granular level of what you're doing in your organization. Sometimes this way is better because you could just go and you could do a bunch of different stuff, like all these fields. I can change field level security. That's good. But my object permissions is the goal of what we're after. So when I click save, I now saved it. And then we're going to change contacts and leads. But watch what happens. Now I can just change objects. And it's just a different layout. Ultimately, the same settings apply. And now I'm going to go to leads. I'm from downtown. I've got the leads. I'm going to leave everything else the same. And then check the challenge to earn my 500 points. You should be able to do the same. Let me know if it worked. I got the woohoo. I'm psyched. Did you get the woohoo? Give me a thumbs up, a chat, wave, whatever you want. It's fine. Oh, who'd I lose? We lost Brian again. All right, so we've already kind of talked about the other things in this. So when we come back Monday, this will be like we're going to really dive. We're going to probably spend all the time doing the role hierarchy and rules, covering some of this again. But does this all make sense? Is it starting to make sense? And now look, what it might really help you understand is that about if you've used Salesforce for a while, like, oh, that's why they see that way and I see that this way, and it's not broken. It's just by design. So we looked at the access to fields, right? When I showed you the enhanced user interface in the profile, right? When we looked at edit, there's all the field permission. And remember, access to fields means you set it as this. We're going to cover this in a minute, so I might as well just tell you now, right? At the profile or permission set level, you can control whether they have access to even see it. So you see that do not call? Look at that on a lead. Let me just click on the edit. So when we talk about access to fields, every object, every field's got field level security, right? So if they have access to read it, right? Okay, you can see do not call, but you can't change it. And you can't change it if you can't see, you can't edit it if you can't see it. Does that make sense? So if I give somebody edit access, it automatically gives them read access. If I turn off read access, they automatically lose edit access because you can't edit data blind. Although I actually did that once when I had my very first computer. The monitor went out. This was in 1991. But it was such a simple program when I was doing. I literally did it by numbers of clicks. And my business partner freaked out. He's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm entering records. You can't see the screen. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And I was right, but I was clever. And it was not a good strategy, but it worked. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about in this after that unit, because we're just going to do the exercises there. The access to records. Now, the access to records that I own is based on my profile, right? But remember, access to records has to do with the organization-wide default. If it's set to private, then the role hierarchy rules open it up. I don't like that that example, but we'll talk more about that because we did it already. It's repetition. We're doing it again, and we'll set it in there, and then we'll talk about the role hierarchy. which sets up a couple of things that we haven't talked about yet. And we'll set it up so that you can get your hands on it and understand that records roll up the chain, but there's something that I don't know if they've covered it. I haven't seen it yet on this description. And that is the account, contact, opportunity, case relationship. That's a little standard inbred little family. So there's rules around those specific objects that we'll talk about that impacted by the role hierarchy when we do that as well. And then the last piece we'll cover on Monday is the rules, the sharing rules, which again, records roll up the chain and they share across the lane. So you can share records to people that are in the same group or in different roles, in the same role or in different roles, that are not hierarchical to each other. They're across the lane. And so being able to share records allows you to share just read-write access, like you would share your car. You can drive or you can ride, but you can't sell my stuff, right? Anyway, and then that'll take care of data security on Monday. So if you want to move ahead and go through it, check it out, let me know. But if your brain is already fried and it's already 6 o'clock, I appreciate your time and attention. What are your questions, comments, and concerns? Anything?
Dom, I just had a question.
Yeah, please.
I was looking over like just a little bit ahead at the control access to the field
Yes.
record at the field level, and I had a little bit of trouble in that, like on the challenge, I was looking to basically edit the field, like the field access on the like the object that we create, and everything in the field access was just all grayed out. Like I wasn't able to click on anything. So I just don't know if I am doing something, like I didn't click something, or like for rating, when I was looking to set the field permissions, I couldn't click on the read access and the edit access options.
All right. I'm trying to, okay, let me just do it real quick because we got a couple minutes before, right? So let's just
Yeah,
play.
sure, no worries.
What's that? Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
perfect.
And I'm just pulling up on the screen so I can see it. So I'm going to create a new permission set. I'm going to call it rating because that's what they said. And what do they want? They want give the rating permission set access to the account rating field, read access, edit access. Okay. So I'm going to go to my object settings. Did you go here, object settings? I'm in the permission set. I'm in the object settings, and I'm in account. Are you in the enhanced profile view or the other one? It doesn't really matter, but.
Yeah, I'm in the in here.
Did you click edit? I know it's a dumb question.
Yeah. No, I know.
Okay.
At first I didn't, but then yes,
Okay.
I realized that.
Hey, look, sometimes you just got to refresh the browser. No kidding. That might be all that it is.
See, like, and see, yours is, I think, the same, but in the field permissions, like the read access and the edit access, like below that.
Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah. So what the rating
all
field?
grayed out.
Oh, right. The rating
That
field.
was my issue.
So,
so maybe it's just that one is not grayed out.
yeah. So click on, so what do you want? You want read and edit on the rating. Yeah. So if you just click edit access on the rating field, did you do that one? Go do it.
Yeah, let me just pull it back up. Maybe I just
please.
realized. That was it.
Now you might, while you do that, Julia,
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I'm gonna go here. Oh no, don't want to go there. All right, so let me go back. I'm gonna go back. So the rating field, I'm gonna give it edit access to the rating field. So now I have a permission set called rating. So just to show you the difference, so y'all can see it, on the account object. So I went to object manager. I went to the account object. I'm going to fields and relationships. At each field, if I go down to the rating field and I edit that field, whoops, I can't change much in it. Hang on a second. But on the field itself, I can edit field level security. It's just a different way to do it. From here, when I'm editing field level security, I'm editing by profile, not permission set. But it's funny because it's visible is the default checkbox. You have to make it read only. It's actually visible and editable. So the idea is if you can't see it, you can't edit it. But if you can see it, you can edit it unless it's read only. Whereas in the permission set, it was, you have to set it to read only and make it editable. It's just a little difference. I kind of think it's funny. It's just, it's undoable. Did you get it? Did it work? I'm just killing time too.
Yeah, no, I was actually just trying it the object manager way. I need to go back and do it in the permission
Well,
set way.
the permission set,
Yeah.
the permission set won't allow you to affect, I mean, from the object manager, you can only set the profile access to each field. At the permission set level, you can, it's just like a profile. You're setting up like a profile, and you're going to assign it to a specific user.
Right.
I know. Does that make sense? Just go back. I want to make sure you can click
Yeah, so I'm
edit.
clicking into accounts. I'm right where you are.
Okay.
And
And then click edit.
Yep.
On this permission set. And then make sure that the rating field.
oh yes, I guess that was it. Thank you.
No worries. Sometimes you just got to be walked through something. Listen, I understand. And that's just, by the way, again, training for a marathon is not about understanding how to run. It's about conditioning yourself for the pain that you're going to go through for 5 hours of running, right? Taking this class is not about learning and remembering everything about Salesforce. It's conditioning you to assimilate the pain of changing all these settings in the setup menu. Does that make sense? Because there's no reason any human being should have to know all this stuff unless it's your job and this is the way you make money and you love doing it. So, all right, guys, it's 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you. Today's Thursday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.